I promised to show you something now that I've never talked about before, and that will be in the 4th edition of my free book, not selling anything, Uncovering the Missing Secrets of Magnetism. Okay, right now we're looking at a magnet underneath the ferrocell, invented by my buddy, Tim. And here you can see, moving clockwise, brighter lines. These are just fed by standard hardware LEDs. Okay. Now underneath that, moving in a seemingly opposite direction, or counterclockwise, you will see dimmer lines. The dimmer lines is the opposite face of the magnet that is furthest away from the surface of the ferrocell. The ferrocell are two perfectly optically flat pieces of glass, in between which is a special solution that is less than 1 micron thin. If you were actually to have this ferrocell in your possession, you would actually see holographic depth far deeper than any hologram, even the best art hologram that the world has ever seen. And this is less than 1 micron thin. But that's not what I'm talking about here. Let's first take a look at what we're looking at, then understand what we're looking at. Because descriptions are one thing, explanations are another. So, here you see it. Clockwise brighter lines and seemingly counterclockwise dimmer lines. So, what do the dimmer lines represent? Now, we hold the position that is irrefutable that there is a double vortex on either pole of a magnet. We think that one side is moving clockwise and the other side is moving counterclockwise, but that's a spatial vector. In reality, the truth is, and this is something I've already mentioned, I'll get to the main point here in a second. The truth is that both are moving in exactly the same direction. If you place your hands like this and move them opposite each other in a way, you'll say, well, they're moving inverse to each other. But if you look at each hand, you'll see that this one's moving counterclockwise, and on the other side, this one's moving counterclockwise. If you move them clockwise, they're also moving inversely. But if you look at each one, this hand's moving clockwise, and the other hand's moving clockwise. So the vector of inverse movement is only a spatial vector. Both are, in reality, moving in the exact same direction. These curvilinear circles, okay, we need to understand something else. It is amazing, and this is the most fundamental principle of the universe, and yes, I don't care if it sounds hubristic or boastful, but I'm the first person on earth to figure out what magnetism is, how magnetism works, and that it can exist no other way. Simplicity is divinity. If you want to talk about Occam's razor, the most simplest explanations must be the true ones. There is nothing possibly conceivable that is more simplex than this. Explaining it, however, is not simple. The explanation is not simple. Really, the main reason it's not simple is because human comprehension of geometers and the notion of geometry and metageometry, space and counterspace, the conjugate principles of force and motion, inertia and acceleration are not anything we learned in college, high school, or anywhere else. Don't learn it in college either. You know, I've hung out in university libraries for countless years. You'll not read about this stuff anywhere. Okay, now let's come to a comprehension, and I'll explain something to you and you'll understand something. And I'm going to show you something for the first time, so bear with me, okay? Something that you'll love, something that's wonderful. Remember that movie 2010, Space Odyssey? And he asked the mystery old guy, said, what's going to happen? And the old guy says, something wonderful. So, I'll amaze you here in a second, okay? Let's explain this first. Okay? We know that the brighter lines is the closest face of the magnet. The dimmer lines that are moving seemingly the opposite direction are actually moving the exact same direction. And these are all curvilinear vectors. But the light is shooting in from here, so obviously we have bright lines and we have voids. Bright lines, voids. Either side. We'll look at this side or the other side. Okay? What is this? It's not additive and destructive interference like we're talking about in the double slit experiment to the laser, but the principle is still the same. It's a conjugate principle that there's a double vortex on either side of any magnet. And a magnet, of course, has spatial vectors. Polarity is only the definition of the inverse of counterspace. So why are there black voids here and then bright lines? Black voids and lines. Same thing for either side. Think about it a second. It's the same principle that we think of as destructive and constructive interference. Hold on, I'm going to show you something neat in a second. You have to bear with me. You have to build up to understanding the comprehension of this geometry that defines a reciprocating precessional hyperboloid that extrapolates itself out as the hypertrochoidal pattern that we see here. This pattern that you see, a spirograph pattern or a hypertrochoid pattern. So why voids, bright line, voids, bright lines? Why? The light is absent here because the vector that is moving where there is no light on either side of this magnet is where the centripetal convergent vortex is coming in. The light is disappearing. You see this black spot right here in the center? This huge black spot that will appear on any magnet, whether it's a spherical magnet, a conical magnet, a donut magnet, a flat magnet, a square magnet, a circular magnet. It all looks the same underneath the ferrocell. Because magnetism is magnetism is magnetism is magnetism, and a magnet is a magnet is a magnet. It has no differentiation as far as the geometry of the magnet, whether it's spherical, conical, cubical, doesn't matter. Because magnetism and inertia, force and motion, inertia and acceleration, are transcendent to the spatial geometry that that magnet is compressed into and formed as. Well, let me show you something else. Okay? This black spot right here is where the light has disappeared. It cannot penetrate this spot, nor can it exist here, because this is the point of centripetal convergence, where light is literally sucking down like a drain down a hole. Okay? And the place